Here we go, going live.
Hey, Mr. Pond,
Must be 6:30 on a Wednesday.
To make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Here we go. Hello everybody, Bob Lusk, the Pond Boss. Holy cow, it must be Wednesday. Jason Nepstad, of course you're first. Love you, man. Glad you're here. We got lots of guys. Dick Tabert looks like he's checking in. It's kind of hard for me to keep up with everybody. Good gosh, we got lots of folks on. Hey, I thought I'd talk tonight a little bit about how the weather affects our lakes and ponds and the fish. I see Mike Collins, so I'm going to kind of do what I do. Hey, you know what? You know the drill. If you've been here, you've seen this. Pond Boss Magazine. Brian Lawrence, hello. John Funk. Hey, I know you asked me something. I hadn't had time to look at it. Danny Mack checked in from the bar. Dude, I want to come to San Antonio and hang out with you one of these days because what you do sounds like a lot of fun, and I kind of like to play. So, $35 a year, Pond Boss Magazine. Aquamax out on the back cover. $35. If you guys will enter hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comments section, click like, and share this to your timeline, you will be eligible for a drawing. You guys know that. For a Pond Boss hat. Yep, there you go. And a Pond Boss mug. This is the smartest mug you'll ever meet. It knows how to keep hot things hot, cold things cold. Look at there, Shannon Kane's checking in. I saw where your wife was hauling dirt, dude. I'm way impressed with that. You've got a keeper there, buddy. Todd Austin's checking in. So I'm going to click on my little laptop here so I can see all the questions and comments. They scroll by way too fast on my phone, and I can slow them down on my laptop. Maybe so, maybe no. John Funk got his Aquamax today. It's sweet. There's Drew Hay checking in from Pennsylvania. Holy cow, that's pretty cool. So let's see here. Now then, let me see what we got going on here. All right, I found it. Whoa, I found this broadcast. We're going live. So let me see here. If our internet connection is fast enough, let me see who all's on here. Good gracious. Brian Lawrence, I said hello. Got you, buddy. Chuck Brinkman. Hey, Chuck. I know you subscribe to Pond Boss, but be sure and watch the next issue because there's something in there for you, buddy, in the Ask the Boss section. So let me see here. I'm going to scroll down here a little bit and see what we got going on. Chris Horsley, good to see you, attaboy. You got that hashtag Pond Boss Magazine going on. Yep, Shannon Kane, yeah, I tell you what, you got a good one going on. So let's see here. Jeremy Duckworth, hi. Billy Bates, hey Bob, hashtag attaboy. Fred Bingaman eating morel mushrooms and watching Lusk. What could be better? Nothing. Morels. You know what, Fred? I didn't realize that morels grow pretty close to here. And here in North Texas, I had a couple of guys come by last week and brought some. They wanted to do a little horse trading, so of course I did. And I don't get to eat morels very often, but my gosh, in the next issue of Pond Boss, there's going to be a recipe for these morels, and I got to eat some. So I am really jealous of my friend Fred Bingaman. Jacob West, why does the Easter bunny hide its eggs? Oh Lord, let me scroll down so I can see this. Because he doesn't want anyone to know he's sleeping with a chicken. I'm going to toast to that. Here. I'm drinking some water, dark water. Mike Rivers is in. Happy Easter. Good stuff there. All right, let's see here. We got Jack Hamilton checking in from Indiana. Maddie said, thank you, Mr. Lusk, for the autograph on the shirt. Hey, Drew, tell Maddie we love her, and she needs to keep fishing. Dave Weber checking in from Kansas. Howdy, Bob. Hey, 2 weeks ago, you said you were going to give us your secret method for putting a deck post into an existing pond. What do you prefer for a post? All right, I'll do that in a minute. Darren Greaves, 20-year-old retention pond, 3 feet deep. Dredge or dig? You know what? Really, let's tackle that real quick. Darren, I don't know. It kind of depends. Is it an urban pond? And if it is where you have limited access, dredging is definitely better. If you want to compare the two, I can give you some people to talk to. You need to talk to, and I don't even know where you are. You need to let me know where you are. You know, Mike Otto might tell you to cut the dam, drain the pond, and dig it out with a bulldozer or a track hoe or something like that. And really, if you got a retention pond that's 3 feet deep, you got to decide which is the best thing to do. And a lot of times, the smartest thing to do is just bury it and dig another pond. But if it needs to be there, then you got to make a choice, and you got to compare cost versus benefit. So I can't answer that because it's going to be based on each site that we look at. So let's see here. Dave Weber, the secret method for putting a deck post in an existing... Okay, here's what I've done before, and this works really, really well. I've taken 2 3/4 inch drill stem, which is in the oil field. It's a heavy-duty pipe, 2 3/4 inches. Have somebody cut it to the length you need, and then take a disc from a farm plow, where they disc the fields with. Take one of those parabolic discs, cut a hole in the middle of it big enough that the pipe can slip into it, slip the pipe in up to about 36 inches and weld it, just tack weld it right there, and then drive that post into the ground. When that disc goes into the mud, it's going to hold pretty tight. If you do that with every post, and then weld either some channel iron or C-purlin to those posts, and yes, you can do that over water, then that's not going to go anywhere. And that disc will hold those pipes in place really, really well. So there we go. And there's Justin Schenck checking in from out on the left coast. Let's see. Darren is in Edwardsville, Illinois. So let's see here. 20-year-old at retention pond. You know what? I probably would call somebody near you that's in the earth moving business and have them come out and take a look at it and give you a pretty good idea. Because and I get several opinions. If this thing is 60 years old and you remember it from when you were a kid, heck, you may be 30, I don't know. But if it's something that's real valuable to you to reset it where it is, then look at dredging it out. Now, dredging is expensive, but so is dirt work. So I'm going to tell you, compare the two. Get an earth mover to tell you, and the process is a big deal. A dredge, you don't have to take any water out of the pond. With heavy equipment, it's best to drain it and just completely start over. If you do that, you got a brand new pond. With a dredge, you can get rid of all the silt. That's pretty much what you can get rid of. You're not going to get rid of any clay. You're not going to add any new depth that wasn't there when that pond was a puppy. So talk to earth movers, talk to dredgers, get some opinions, then choose what you want to do. All right, so I was looking at the radar today, and let's see what else we got here before I go on. John Mashburn, good to see you, man. So, from down in almost, I guess, across into Mexico, coming up through the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, up into Arkansas, and then headed north, there's this massive line of storms. They're not aggressive major storms, but they're just big rain dumpers. They're making a lot of rain out there. There's some areas that have gotten 6 inches of rain already. Flash flooding going on in the Metroplex. And so we are in spring. And in May we get rain. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that. Let's see. There's Mark Dauber checking in from Montgomery, Alabama. Pentlala, Alabama, actually. Mike Waltrip. How many pounds of tilapia per acre and 2 acres of pond, assuming it's 15 to 20 feet deep? Well, Mike, I got your email. I forwarded it to Walter and to Sean, so you should receive a response promptly, and I'm going to follow up on that. And if they don't respond promptly, then you and I will take care of this. But for a 2-acre pond, if you're wanting to control algae and create enough forage fish to help bump up bluegill survival rates and feed some little bitty bass and things, I'm going to tell you 20 pounds per acre. So 40 pounds, 50 pounds, something like that in a 2-acre pond is perfect. John May, let's see, Dick Tabbert, I bought some dock posts with augers and then twisted them in. Yeah, you know what? That's a good idea too, Dick. You can actually buy some dock posts that have augers, and then you can just turn them like that and just drill down into the dirt as deep as you want to go. So that's a good way to do it too. John Mashburn got 5 inches just the other day here in north central Arkansas. Don't know how to break this to you, but there's more coming. Arkansas has just gotten a huge amount of rain. So what does that do? What does that do? What do these spring showers do to a pond? So hit me with your questions, and I'll share you some answers with you. But I'm going to tell you, when rain comes down, it's going to have several effects. It's going to do several things to your pond. First of all, it's going to change the water chemistry. Now, the water chemistry changes based on the amount of volume of water coming through the pond. So if you got a pretty big watershed and you get a 4-inch rain, you're going to have some flushing going on, and that flushing can alter the water chemistry. Now, rain is always acid. Now, most people don't know that. Most people think that rain coming down out of the sky is neutral. And when it first forms, it is. But as it falls through the sky, it collects gases. It collects carbon dioxide. It collects oxygen. It collects all kinds of whatever's in the air. Well, as it collects carbon dioxide coming down as it falls to the ground, it changes it to carbonic acid, which makes your rain turn acidic. And that's natural. That's normal. Hey, Colin McKean, good to see you, buddy. So you're going to get acid rain. So now, if your pond doesn't have a lot of alkalinity, if you don't have a lot of minerals in there dissolved, calcium carbonate especially, if your alkalinity is low and the buffering capacity is low, when we get these rains, it's going to drop your pH some, unless your pH is already low. Like Richmond Mill Lake, Blackwater Lakes along the Atlantic seaboard, East Texas, Western Arkansas. If you've got pine trees where you live, your water's acidic, which means that when the water comes out of the sky, the pH is going to be around 6.3 to 6.5. If your pond's pH is lower than that, the rain is going to raise it. If your pH is higher than that, rain is going to drop it, based on the buffering capacity. The more buffering capacity that you have, think antacids, think Tums, think short-term Prilosec, think calcium carbonate. Calcium carbonate absorbs acid. So the higher your alkalinity, the less likely your pH is going to be to change. Now, water chemistry can get a little complicated, and I don't want to lose a bunch of viewers because I see, oh heck, we got 33 people and it just dropped to 31. Now it's at 34. So I don't want you guys to fade away just because I'm talking about pH. But go with this. Water chemistry changes when the rain falls on it. The rain has acid that it collects and converts as it's falling out of the sky. So when we get these heavy rains in May, like we're getting right now in different parts of the country, I mean, even in Arizona, they've gotten heavy rains. There's Danny Tolliver. Hey, Danny, good to see you, buddy. Then your pH is going to change. Now, when your pH changes, that creates kind of a trickle-down effect, kind of like Reaganomics. We love Reaganomics. So what happens when the pH changes, that changes the biology of what's going on in the water, which means that your plants are going to change, your fish are going to change. That doesn't mean it's going to get bad or good. None of that is really relevant unless it's a dramatic change, which isn't common. Fred Bingaman, morels are selling for $50 to $60 per pound right here. Hey, Fred, you know, I love that. I was, one of those guys that gave me a few morels, he gave me like 30 of them. He told me that somebody went online and looked at the Walmart website, and they were selling for like $300 a pound. Well, I guess that's great if you don't have any morels, but that's fascinating to me. Morels are like little gold nuggets, you know. And Debbie and I got to eat a few. It was pretty dadgum tasty. So when it's raining, like we've had, it's going to change the pH of the water. When it changes the pH, it's going to adjust the alkalinity. It's going to adjust some chemical parameters that adjust the biology parameters. All right. So how does it affect plants? Well, I'll tell you how these heavy rains affect plants. There's a number of things. The change of pH can affect which plants grow, for one thing, but it can also affect the temperature. Holy cow, Saturday we had, over the weekend, good gosh, we had a lot of family over. My gosh, we had a great time. Had my son and daughter-in-law come up from Houston. They got two little bitty ones. They have a 3-year-old and an 18-month-old, and they got to hang out with their cousins. One of those is 5 years old, and the other one is 2 years old. I'll lose track of all this. But they got to hang out. And then on Sunday, my 14-year-old grandson, Nolan, if you've seen very many pictures in the magazine, he's been in a few pictures. Well, Nolan's now 14, and he called me at 5:15 on Sunday afternoon, and we were done. Debbie and I were toasted. We were tired. We'd been hosting family all weekend long. I mean, We dyed Easter eggs on Saturday. We went to a Purina store in Salina, Texas, and bought some baby chicks and let those kids pick them out. You know, we smoked a brisket. We had a campfire in our fire pit each night. We did s'mores. We let them camp out in the RV. You know, we let them catch their first fish. Several kids, there were 3 kids that caught their very first fish. It was a big time. And they all left after church on Sunday. Well, at 5:15, Nolan calls, and he says, "Hey, Papa, you know, we like to come out there and haven't been out there in a while." And I said, "Yeah, Nolan, tell me about it." He says, "Would it be okay? We don't have school tomorrow. Would it be okay if I brought some of my friends and we come out there?" I said, "Heck yeah." Well, it's not because I'm cool and my wife is cool, which she is, I'm not. But it's because we have such a cool place. We have a swimming pond right by the house. So he conned his daddy in. I'm going to take away the word con. Convinced his daddy to gather up Nolan and 5 of his buddies. And this was like at 5:20 on Sunday that he called me. By 7 o'clock, they were at our house. They were fishing. They were fishing until about dark. Daddy brought some hot dogs, so I cooked hot dogs. We built a fire for the 4th night in a row. We did s'mores. And then about 8:30 Sunday night, they all were kind of talking back and forth. And they all decided that they were going to jump in the pond. Well, the water temperature had gone from probably 74 down to 68, which is pretty cool for a Texas kid. Well, I can't tell you how much fun it was. You can go to my personal Facebook page and watch the dark video where those kids, just one after the other, just went and jumped in that pond. You know, and the rains had changed it, dropped the temperature about 5 or 6 degrees. Well, when the water temperature drops, that affects the metabolism of the plants. Now, different plants have different temperature needs. They have different sunlight needs, and they got to get their food. So if your pond has those things, then you're going to grow some plants, no matter what. You can go buy some herbicides and knock them out. You know, you can go pull them out with a rake. Great. But when they've got the right temperature, they've got the right food, and they've got sunlight, something's going to grow. But a 5-degree temperature change can stop all that. You know, it can go from bushy pondweed beginning to grow and algae slowing down to bushy pondweed growth being arrested and algae growth exploding. So when the temperature changes because of some rainfall events, you can see some changes going on with your plants. Mike Rivers, smoked brisket. Man, I'm going to tell you, I had some of that for supper tonight. Oh my gosh. We've got, on our property here, we got a bunch of post oak trees. So I'll go cut some oak. Now, we only cut dead trees typically unless we need to do something with a live one, which we mostly don't. So we cut dead trees, and then I use little bitty pieces. I got a little smoker. I say a little smoker. I don't even know what it is. I can put 3 briskets on it once, so maybe it's pretty big. I don't know. But anyway, we use those oak trees or that oak wood to smoke, and we smoke it just with oak wood over an indirect fire. Ooh, oh my gosh, it's really good. Billy Bates, lucky kids to have a pond boss for granddad. The pond boss is lucky to have all these cool grandkids that want to come. You know, spend time catching fish, spend time hanging out with each other, you know, spend time in the water. That's pretty dadgum cool. And you know what? You guys are the same way. I get that. Mike Collins says, I have a pond where I raise blue cats for my freezer. Would the tilapia work as well for them as they do for bass? I have red ear and bluegill for forage now. No longer see the fatheads and golden shiners I originally stocked. That is an outstanding question. So let's tackle that. And I'm going to come at you from several angles. Let's talk about how this weather affects our fish behavior. Now, the way that the weather, and there's a couple of things with the weather that affect fish behavior. And I'll tell you what they are. When the temperature drops a little bit, that slows their metabolism rate down. But if the temperature drops, say, from 60 to 55 with largemouth bass, that completely stops spawning. But if the temperature drops from 78 to 72 or 71, it has no effect on spawning at all. Just has a little bit of an effect on how they feed. They're going to feed better at 71 than they do at 77, although that range of temperature is ideal for largemouth bass. Now, blue cats, on the other hand, being cold-blooded, and being top-line predators, a big blue cat will eat whatever fits in its mouth. It's actually, believe it or not, a blue cat's a bigger predator than a largemouth bass. A lot of people don't know that, but by golly, they are. I mean, I've seen a 50-plus pound blue cat with a 3-pound bass in its belly. Let that soak in for a minute. So, let's see here. We got several things going on here. I'm going to back up a little bit. So, would tilapia work as well for them? Is that, yeah, you know what? Here's the way tilapia would work well for blue cats. The bigger the blue cat, the bigger the meal they want to eat. So if you stock some tilapia under to say 3/4 of a pound to a pound a piece, or even 4 to the pound, and the blue cat don't eat them immediately, as they begin to reproduce, their babies are going to grow up to be 3 or 4 inches before the blue cat eat them. So if you don't have any largemouth bass in there, and you've got bluegill and red ear, and I know the fatheads and golden shiners are gone because the blue cat have decimated them, but it depends on how many blue cat you've got. But I'm assuming since you're growing them for the freezer, that you're catching some and eating them, and the remaining fish are getting bigger, and you're restocking from time to time, probably every 2 or 3 years. That's the assumption I'm going to make. The tilapia, when we start to get into the fall, now blue cats, they love cool to really warm water. Warm water meaning in the mid-80s. They're real active from 58 to probably 85, something like that. When the temperature gets hotter, they slow down. Now, blue cats are going to be spawning when the water temperature is in the mid-70s. Now, believe it or not, blue cats don't spawn until they're about 4 or 5 years old and weigh 5, 6, 7 pounds. So odds of them reproducing in a pond are not very good. So the thing is with blue cats, you're going to be stocking them from time to time. But with the tilapia in that environment, if I'm thinking about it right, and you've got bluegill and red ear surviving, then the tilapia are going to survive. Those tilapia are going to get to be 3 or 4 inches long, and then in the fall, when they start to get sluggish as the water temperature begins to drop, that's when your blue cat are going to go in and wear them out. So I think that's a good choice. Now it depends on where you are. If you're south of a line that goes, say, from east and west through Waco to south of Jackson, Mississippi, to south of it, Birmingham, say south of Montgomery, south of Atlanta, Georgia, tilapia might not be a good choice because the risk of them dying each winter goes down. You want them to die because you don't want to trade problems. So I'm going to tell you that if you're north of that line and they're legal in your state, yeah, they're a good idea. John Funk, first year with fairly clear water, 5 years now. First year to have an explosion of largemouth bass and little bluegills, hundreds of each, 2 to 3 inches long. Is this why my fish are not interested in fish food pellets? No. They're going to be interested in fish food pellets. Now, little bitty fish, especially those little bass, they don't know that you have pellets. But those bluegill, if you'll present them same place, same time, every day, the bluegill will become accustomed and conditioned, and they'll come eat those pellets. So there's certain fish that just won't eat them. Typically, crappie won't, red ear sunfish won't, largemouth bass that aren't feed trained won't. The fish that will are bluegill, fathead minnows, channel catfish, bullheads, carp, golden shiners. Those will come to fish food. Some fish just won't come to it. But if you're consistent, feeding same place, same time, every day, they're going to be as consistent as you are. So be consistent. Okay, so Michael Apostolopoulos. Oh, Lord, you know what? I hate butchering people's names. Let me give him Apostolopoulos. Hope that's right. Hey, Pond Boss, I have a 1 acre pond and it's 8 feet deep in the middle. It's full of 6 to 12 inch cats. What kind of cats? Kitty cats, channel cats, bullheads, flatheads. Tell me what kind of catfish you got. Started feeding 2 years ago when I got the house. Last winter I had a huge die-off and had tons of fish dead on the shore. This past year, winter, no die-off, and the fish got huge, 12 to 15 what? Inches? Pounds? Tell me what that is. What would cause a die-off, and how can I prevent it again? I have no bubbler or air. All right, well, when you have a fish die-off, typically, especially fish are feeding, it's because your water quality is deteriorated. Okay, Michael says he's got channel cats. Okay, what channel catfish will do, and they're notorious for this, is they will outgrow their environment. You can feed them, they will eat. For every, pretty much with catfish, channel catfish, for every 2 pounds of feed you feed, you're going to get about a pound of catfish, which means you're going to get about a pound of fish waste. So at some point, you're creating more waste than what the pond can process. And if the pond can't process it, it collects, and at some point it gets toxic. So your water quality deteriorates. So you got to harvest some of those channel catfish. When you say 12 to 15, I'm presuming that they're 12 to 15 inches is what I'm presuming. Okay, so let me see. Holy cow, we got a lot of things going on here. John Henry, luck has nothing to do with it. It's a blessing. It is a blessing. I'll acknowledge that. That's exactly right. But on the channel catfish, let's see, let me go back here and look at this again. You said you've got a 1 acre pond. I'll tell you this, Michael, if you've got a 1 acre pond, you're probably going to grow 500 to 600 pounds of channel catfish through the course of a year. But you should not let your pond have that many pounds of catfish for an extended period of time. So if you've got a couple hundred catfish in there, once they hit about 2 pounds, start culling some. Start taking some out. Eat them. Put them in the freezer. Share them with the family. Share them with friends. Trade for strawberries. Something. Craig Guffin. Cool information as always. Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yep. Glad you're there, Craig. Mike Collins says, no, they're rays. Okay, I've already forgotten where we were on that. Your blue cats reproduce? Dude, that's kind of interesting. That's a little bit different. I tell you what, Mike, one of the things you need to be worried about, and I don't like the word worried, one thing you need to think about, if your blue cat are reproducing, then you got to be careful that you don't get overcrowded with them. You need to be sure that you're culling some, and you kind of got to be paying attention to how many you got. If you're feeding and you see 100 coming to the feeder in a small pond, harvest some, take some out. Mike Collins, 2 acres, take out 50 to 75 a year. I got fingerling. Okay, yeah, well, if you're taking out 50 to 75 a year, that's a good idea. Pay attention to this. Here's a good way to look at it. If you're feeding more than about 10 pounds of fish food per day, you are on track for water quality issues in August. Think about that. If you're feeding 10 pounds of feed in that pond, in that 2 acre pond, every day, you're headed for water quality issues by August. So I would say this: if you're feeding less and the fish aren't gaining weight, you need to harvest more. Let me say that again. If you're feeding less and the fish aren't gaining weight, you need to harvest more fish. And be selective about the size of the fish that you take out. I see Joyce Earl. Hi, Joyce. All right, so Jason Nebstad. I always hear professional bass fishermen talk about any lake they find hydrilla. The fishing is typically great. Was a local 160-acre lake close to me that had hydrilla, and it was common to catch double-digit bass every other trip. They got rid of the grass, and the lake became a normal, okay fishing lake. My question is, what is it about hydrilla that creates trophy fisheries where lakes with other grass do not become a trophy lake? What I'm trying to figure out is what grass could somewhat replicate hydrilla without destroying your lake over time. Here's the deal about hydrilla, and I'll be frank. If any of my clients ever put hydrilla in their lake, they're fired. I'm not going to deal with that. Hydrilla is highly invasive. It sucks the nutrients out of the water. Now, hydrilla does not cause trophy largemouth bass. It attracts them. And it attracts them because they can be couch potatoes on the edge of that hydrilla and just wait for bait fish to come out of it. Hydrilla is good, which I'm not going to use that word in the same sentence very often, is that it's highly attractive to bait fish. The problem with hydrilla is that it will grow exponentially. It can grow 6 inches a day. It reproduces by fragmentation, seeds, and rhizomes. It is so invasive that it can take over a lake and consume all water 12 feet deep and less. We don't want that. So the native species of plants, now just because somebody catches a trophy bass off of hydrilla, the hydrilla has nothing to do with it other than it attracted the bass. Because when that hydrilla goes away, that's still a trophy bass lake. The difference is they left. They had to go somewhere else. They got to go somewhere to make an honest living, which means they can't be couch potatoes. They got to go move. So they're looking for something else. Boat docks, submerged structure, creek beds, the thermocline. You know, and I've had this debate with a bunch of people, and you're not going to change my mind on this. Hydrilla is not good. It doesn't create trophy fisheries. I've got trophy bass lakes where the primary vegetation is nothing but American pondweed with bushy pondweed, and it's working. You know, so you got to have the right percentage, the right amount. So Jason, your deal is you need to find what's native to your part of the country. I love your thought process about eelgrass and look for American pondweed. You need to do that. All right, let's see what's going on here. Let's see, Michael Channel Cat got it. Okay, John Mashburn, we have a pond that's about 3 acres in size, 5 years old. It's dug out. It's been stocked with crappie, bluegill, and a hybrid bluegill that we catch. We catch several crappie in the 5 to 8 inch range and a few being up to 12. Is this about right for the age of the pond? Oh boy, I got to be politically correct and no, I don't. I'm not going to be politically correct. That's too small a water for crappie. So the crappie at 5 years of age, you should have 10 to 12 inch crappie in there abundantly. But the fact that it's a small pond, it's 3 acres, you really need 20 acres or more to have a successful crappie fishery. And the fact that you stocked with bluegill and hybrid bluegill, the crappie aren't growing because they don't have enough to eat. And then they reproduce and their babies don't have enough to eat because the baby crappie are feeding on the baby bluegill. Hybrid bluegill don't typically reproduce, and if they do, it's a small number. The hybrid bluegill they're going to reproduce will reproduce with bluegills and not with themselves. So you're not producing the right amount of small forage fish to support crappie, and the crappie are overeating the small forage fish that are growing in there. So bottom line is the pond is too small to be real successful with crappie. You probably ought to add some golden shiners and start culling some of those small crappie. Let's see here. Jack Hamilton says, hi, Brent. So, hi, Brent. Danny Mac, damn, I can't get the live stream. Facebook says the video is ended from the beginning. I don't know. We're going and people are asking questions. There's my wife, Debbie Dobbs Lusk. She had a ball with these grandkids over the weekend. We had a good time. Michael says there are a lot of small cats in the pond. Should I get a bunch of small ones out? Yeah, you know what? I would. And I don't know where you are. Heck, I'd trade for some. I'd like to have some little blue cats. But if you can get some small blue cats out, that's going to make more room for more food to grow bigger blue cats. Now, here's the way that works. Blue cats have a tendency to dominate the pond based on their size. Now, they won't typically outgrow their space like a channel catfish will. Channel catfish will just explode in growth, foul the water, and then a bunch of them die. And in August, we get phone calls from 5 or 6 people who have killed their fish with kindness. They have fed them so much without harvesting enough that the water quality deteriorated. Blue cat will do that as well, but to a lesser extent. And when you have them crowded, you're not going to get the growth rates that you would if they weren't crowded. So here's my answer to that. Now listen to this closely. If your blue cat are crowded, harvest some. Now, there's a little caveat there. What's the word crowded mean? If you've got more than 60 to 100 blue cat per acre, that's crowded. And if you can harvest them, harvest them. They'll go into a trap. You can make a big, 24-inch diameter trap with a cone in it, bait it with fish food that they like to eat. You can trap a bunch of them if you want to. Let's see here. Alex Snow is asking me, what is your favorite, easiest artificial structure for a pond? By far, my favorite structure are mossback fish attractors. Mossback fish habitat. And if you want to get some of those, email me, send me a note. I'll help you get them. Because one of my favorite things about mossback is those guys will work with us to design what you need for your pond and then make recommendations to help make your pond better. David Atkinson checking in from the Caribbean. Holy cow, good to see you there. TJ Graney's checking in, looks like, from Austin, Texas. Bob Wusher from Plano, Purina. Speaking of Purina, we are proud to tell you that Purina is a major sponsor of Pond Boss. We love those guys. They've got the back copy of the magazine, every issue. They got the inside front cover. I'm going to tell you a pretty cool story about Purina. Back in, I guess it was 1995, we sent a letter to Purina and said, sent it to Purina Mills. I think it was 1201 South Hanley Drive, St. Louis, Missouri. Attention Marketing Department. Here's our magazine. We want you to play. Love Pond Boss. Except there was more to it than that. Well, they called us shortly after that and said, hey, not only do we want to advertise in your magazine, we want the inside front cover, but better yet, can we come meet with you and talk about how we can create some products for the pond industry? And I was flabbergasted that such a big company would take interest. Well, they did. They came to Texas. We spent 3 days together, and we talked about things that they could do to create some better products for the pond management business. They saw that business, that industry that was beginning to burgeon a little bit, as a viable industry that they could actually help. So, at a barbecue joint, Glen Rose, Texas, Hammond's Barbecue, I asked them this question. I said, can you guys make different size pellets? Because we're feeding different sizes and different species of fish, and we could use some smaller pellets in the feed. I mean, it was almost like a light bulb went off. They said, yeah. Well, that's when Purina's Game Fish Chow was born in a barbecue joint in Glen Rose, Texas, about 2 hours from where I'm sitting. So one of my favorite things about Purina Mills is they've really worked hard to create products for you and for me that we can use to have better fish. And who better to put that feed in the pond than Texas Hunter? Texas Hunter is a big sponsor of Pond Boss too. There's Texas Hunter. So if you don't have a copy of the magazine, let me know. We'll send you a sample. Or better yet, just subscribe. It's $35 a year. Look at that. There we go. So now I see Bob Wusher says, I have several that are still going strong after 10 years. I completely believe that. Totally. Let's see. Joanne Pillafont. Hi, Bob. Any reputable source to purchase koi? You know what, Joanne? Depends on where you are. I don't remember where you are, but to answer your question, yes, there are reputable sources, and they can actually ship to you. So remind me where you are. Mike Waltrip, how do you get rid of Hydrilla? You know what? Aquathol K is a good way. I would use herbicides on that, because if you try to cut it, you're going to spread it. So, yeah, there's ways to do that. There's Kevin Briggs. Kevin's kind of been out of the picture for a while. Alex No, we talked about that. Let's see. John Mashburn, you bet. Ryan Barrett, what's the best bait fish to grow big bass? By far, bluegill are the backbone of the food chain to grow really big bass there, Ryan. So if you're going to try to grow big bass, you got to have bluegill. Now, to grow truly big bass, you got to diversify the food chain. What that means to me is we need bluegill, we need red ear sunfish. If you're far enough south, you need threadfin shad. Threadfin shad support the 10 to 14 inch bass and keep them from competing as much with big bass. And every trophy bass lake that I've got under management, every one of them has gizzard shad. Every one. But don't just go stock gizzard shad just because the Pond Boss said so. There's got to be a strategy behind it. So don't run out there, but it's because I just told you that every trophy bass lake I manage has got gizzard shad. You got to know what you're doing. We need to have at least 25-30% of the biomass of bass in that pond to be 17.5 inches or bigger. Let that soak in for a minute. And the reason is we want the gape size of the mouth of a bass to be big enough that it can eat a large gizzard shad. Now, if you don't have that, if you got a crowded bass lake, don't use gizzard shad. It ain't going to work. Bluegill to the backbone. Red ear is an insurance policy. Threadfin feeds the intermediate-sized bass. It helps take them out of competition. Tilapia, it's a great choice because that helps to survive or help survival rates of bluegill reproduction. And then gizzard shad, if we have enough big bass to feed them. That's the way that works. Okay. Mike Cottrell, your opinion on pond lights. Been thinking of installing submerged ones or deck lights. Do both. Over at LL2, about 2 miles from here, we've got a deep glow light. And I love to sit out there after dark and just watch the fish. They come up to it. They just kind of circle counterclockwise for a while. Then some will disappear. Some will go back. Turtles come in. Those are real cool fish attractors. Now, we've also got one of those Bojo fish lights, which has got a, what do you call that light? That's a curly Q light that lasts forever. We've got that with a whirligig underneath it. This, when the bugs are attracted to the light, knocks the bugs down in the water without killing them. We got turtles and bluegill that come up and eat those bugs. That's pretty cool. All right, Jason Nepstad, the grass disappeared in 1 year and you can no longer catch double-digit bass, so I know they didn't leave the lake. And what you said sounds like exactly what happened. Okay, I'm going to tell you a little story. About once a month, I'm a guest on an Austin show on 1300 The Zone on iHeartRadio. Now, you might check that out because I'm usually on Sundays once a month. I don't usually promote it, but down there, Lake Austin, they had Hydrilla. And, man, there were 5 or 6 sherrilunkers that came out of that lake. Well, then the LCRA that controls or manages that string of lakes, called the Highland Lakes, came in and stocked a bunch of Grasscarp, and they ate it, and they ate it fast. Well, man, that got all the anglers up in arms. They were mad about it. But on the radio show, the host, Ken Milam, asked me, he said, what happened to those big bass? I said, they moved. They had to. They lost their home. And if guys can figure out where they are, they can still catch them. Well, there's a pretty avid angler there that figured it out, and he won a tournament a few months after the Hydrilla was totally gone. He had a 5-fish stringer that was right at 40 pounds. So the fish were there. They just had to change their lifestyle. They went from being couch potatoes to having to go out and make an honest living, which meant that they did lose a little bit of weight. They got a little bit lean because they had to move more, but they were still there. You know, and so that's what happens when Hydrilla goes away. Jason says, I got an order of corkscrew eelgrass. That's outstanding. Now, be sure when you plant that corkscrew eelgrass, Jason, put an exclusion fence around it so the turtles don't come in and chop it off. Anybody that's going to buy some plants to put in the water, you need to protect those plants until they can get rooted and really start taking off and growing. So, that's what I would do there. Mike Cottrell, I figure lights help getting idea on what's the... Figure lights help on getting idea what fish you have. Yeah, you know what? Typically, now, not all fish are attracted. Catfish aren't going to come to those lights. Crappie typically aren't, but bluegills, red ears, other species of sunfish, and largemouth bass will come right to those lights, as will turtles. So, you can do that. Michael said, thanks, Bob. You're welcome. Wisher said, Lusk is the game fish guru. I don't know if I'm a guru, but I helped invent that feed, and I'm proud of that, Bob Wisher. Marco de Jesus. Hey, look at there, Marco. Good gosh. Marcos de Jesus is the Texas Parks and Wildlife biologist, fishery biologist. I was just talking about Lake Austin a little bit, Marcos. And Marcos is in charge of that lake with the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. He said, would you go into how heavy rain influx affects a stratified impoundment in the fall? I get calls about this quite a bit when fish kills occur. Thanks for talking about rain effects. You bet. Marcos, that's a great question. What happens, especially in the fall, and really in August or September, if we get a heavy influx of rain, that water coming out of the sky is always cooler than the water in your pond. So what happens when that rain comes down out of the clouds and hits your pond, it's going to cool the top layer. And when that top layer of water cools, and it matches the temperature below the thermocline, you're going to see a turnover or at least a mixing. And the water, got to remember this, the water below the thermocline, by the time we get into 4 or 5 weeks into the summer after stratification, remember this, water only receives oxygen by 2 ways: photosynthesis from plants and contacting the atmosphere. So warm water in the summertime stratifies on top of a cold layer that can't contact the atmosphere. So you have this warm layer of water sitting on top of a cool layer of water. That cool layer of water is receiving fish waste, organic matter, and it's breaking it down the best it can, which takes oxygen. So that lower layer of water runs out of oxygen and becomes what we call anoxic, has no oxygen in it. So when we get a big rain in July, August, September, even sometimes in October, that cools that warm layer on top to the temperature that it gets heavy enough to drop down to the thermocline. It will mix with that lower layer of water, which regurgitates that lower layer of water up to the top, sucks oxygen out of the good water, and causes a fish kill. And the common, easy answer is called a turnover. And rain can trigger that. It actually can trigger that now. The good news is rainfall in May. Typically, the water below the thermocline has not yet run out of oxygen, so your risk is mitigated with that. Great question, Marcos. Glad you're watching, man. Thanks for checking in. Jack Hamilton, Bob, I have bluegill and largemouth bass in a 1 acre pond that I feed and I aerate. It's about 5 years since I first stocked. I have some 3-pound bass and 1-pound bluegill. How much should I harvest a year, and what percentage of bass and bluegill, and which size of them should I concentrate on? Outstanding question, Jack. I'll tell you this. With a 1 acre pond that's 5 years old or been stocked for 5 years, I would not harvest those 3-pound bass. I would let them grow. I would take their babies. I'd be taking bass that are 14 inches and smaller, because now here you are in the 5th year. If you've got any bass that are 14 years old that were stocked originally, they need to come out anyway. They're not even on the junior varsity. They need to come out. So here's what I would do with that 1 acre pond. I'd take about 25 pounds, 30 pounds of bass over the course of the year. I would take them out that are 14 inches and smaller and underweight. Now let that soak in a minute. Take out the underweight ones. If you catch one that looks chunky and fat, it knows how to play the game in your pond. Put it back and let it keep playing, because that fish has got a better chance of getting big. So take the fish that are underweight. Learn the relative weights of largemouth bass. 10-inch bass, 10 ounces. 12-inch bass, 12 ounces. 14-inch bass, 1 pound, 7 ounces. If you want a little spreadsheet to plug them in, I got them. Send me an email at boblusk@outlook.com. I'll send you that spreadsheet. Hi, John Wilson. Good to see you, buddy. So I would be culling bass that are underweight, underperforming. Now on the bluegills, listen to this. Never, ever take your biggest bluegill. Take the next size down. You don't ever want to take the biggest ones. The biggest ones dominate the nest, and the only way for a bluegill to kick that one off the nest is to outgrow it. So if you want to grow some sure enough big bluegill, 1.25 pounds, 1.5 pounds, even 2 pounds, you got to protect the biggest ones, because in order for a fish to outgrow that one, it's got to get the chance to do it. Harvest the next size down. Don't take your biggest bluegills out. All right, so now then, Joanne's in Waynesville, North Cackalack. Jacob West, I just renewed for 2 years with Pond Boss Magazine. Don't forget to renew. Good point. If you haven't joined, if you haven't subscribed, please do that. Go to pondboss.com, subscribe to the magazine. $35 a year. It's well worth it. Jacob will tell you. And if you haven't renewed, do that. Thank you. Craig Dixon, feeding bluegill with Aquamax in a 5 acre pond in Tulsa daily. Stocked 150 8-inch channel catfish in October. The catfish are not feeding with the bluegill. They will. Just don't give up on them. Just keep feeding. The more consistent you are, the more consistent they will. Let's see here. You said you stocked them in October. Yeah, the water's just now in Tulsa, just now getting warm enough for channel catfish to want to respond. Now, if they don't respond by the end of May, then I'd be wondering how well they're doing. Let's see here. Alex knows typically how long does it take to get approved for Grasscarp once you apply? I'm presuming you're in Texas. It doesn't take that long, usually about a month after you apply. Mark Dauber, Brother Scott was just out here, sitting on the pier, listening to the program. Said to tell you he wished he knew how to make Facebook work so he could tell you he likes the show. I love Ray Scott. Ray Scott is one of my favorite people ever. And Mark Dauber, I'm a little jealous that you got to hang out with an iconic American, man. One of Field & Stream Magazine's top 50 most influential people in the outdoors. So I'm thrilled to death he was watching this show. And if wave at him as he drives out, tell him I love him and I miss him. I'll call him here in a few days just to check on him. Let's see, Joanne, reputable koi to purchase in North Carolina. Joanne, I don't know who to call there. Let's see, you said you're in Waynesville. You know what? Why don't you call Foster Lake Management? I don't know that they can supply you, but I know that they'll know who can. Foster Lake Management's in Garner, North Carolina. They're one of our advertisers and good friends. I've known Johnny Foster for, 35 years. I love that guy. He's straight up. He can tell you. He can tell you where to go. Let's see, Chuck Brinkman, feeding my fish now. I wish I could show how much the water's boiling. Yep, well, we're all jealous of that. My feeder goes off at 7. I missed it tonight because I'm here. But this is pretty fun. Jason Nepstad says, he's talking to Joey because Jason's there. He says, I could have just given you as many as you wanted. Our lake was overrun. You know what? I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, Jason's got a whole bunch of them. I don't know if he can get them out now. All right, we're coming up on 7:20. Let me think about the topics. Fish behavior changes as the temperature changes. Now, when we're talking about warm water fish, their behavior shifts as the water temperature goes up and goes down. All fish are cold-blooded, and they have a peak operating temperature. With largemouth bass, they start making a bed, making a nest like at 58 degrees. They start spawning at 62. They'll do that in phases of the moon until the water temperature goes above about 68, and sometimes they'll still spawn after that. So, bluegills, they'll feed all the way down to temperatures of 45 or 46 degrees, and their peak operating temperature is in the mid-70s. Channel catfish, when it's 55 degrees, they shut down. But when it's 74 degrees to 83 degrees, they will boil the water. Now once the temperature gets above about 84, 85, bass pretty much shut down. Channel catfish get sluggish. Bluegill are boiling the water. So when you get these rains in the springtime, depending on the temperature of your water, that is going to change the way your fish behave. If you're in the middle of the spawn and you get a 4-inch rain on top of your pond, the temperature is going to drop. When it drops, fish are going to go off the nest, typically, unless it doesn't drop below that bottom temperature, which for a bass is 58 degrees. So temperature does affect bass behavior. It does affect fish behavior. It affects plant growth. Algae love cool water. Once the water temperature goes up, most species of algae stop growing, something else kicks in, like the pondweeds or milfoil or something like that. So, pay attention to your weather. Oh my gosh, holy cow. Oh, you're going to love this. We electrofished 3 lakes yesterday east of Atoka, Oklahoma. One of them we stocked 5 years ago, and the owner's done nothing with it. So we went in, and you'd think after 5 years the bass would be a little crowded, the bluegill numbers and baitfish would be down. In fact, that's what happened. But there were 2 other lakes that he had built, and I'm talking lakes. One of them's probably over 100 acres. He never put any fish in there. So one was about 35 acres. We went and shocked it, and we shocked 3 size classes of bass, never been stocked. It's in the middle of a hunting lease. He thinks that some of the hunters brought a few fish and stocked in there, and the fishery looked like that, where we shocked up a few pretty good sized bass, 3.5, 4 pounds, but many bass in the 8 to 12 inch size range, and a few bluegills. But the big lake, 100 acres, we shocked up in our catch per unit of effort. We measure how many fish we catch extrapolated into an hour on the pedal in the electrofishing boat. A trophy bass lake is about 45 to 65 bass per hour. A balanced lake is 55 to 85 bass per hour. A bass crowded lake is 85 to 150. And one that's real crowded is above 150. That 100-acre lake had no food in it, had bass only, and our catch rate was 190 bass per hour. That's a huge number. And they were all underweight by at least 15%. So what we think happened was when he built that lake in 2015, it filled up with rain at the perfect time in May for little schools of baby bass to come from the small ponds in the watershed and load that thing up with baby bass. Some of them grew up and now they've reproduced and the numbers are all out of whack. And for a 100-acre lake, man, that's like trying to stop a freight train, turn it around and redirect it. So we're going to have to really do some soul searching on telling him what to do about that lake. But there's not nearly enough food and there's way too many mouths to feed. And that lesson, here's the lesson. When you build a lake, stock it right as soon as it needs to be done. Then 5 years down the road or 3 years down the road, you're not trying to unpickle a pickle. When you take that cucumber and you put it in vinegar, it's a pickle. You can't undo it. That's what he's got right now. And he's not going to be able to fix it for cheap. So I'm trying to kind of scan through my mind and help him figure out what to do about that lake. Now, the downside, other than the fishery being upside down, is that he's not a real heavy angler, not a real strong angler. And he doesn't share his ranch with a lot of people, so there's not a whole lot of pressure on it. So we got to think through that a little bit. Thought you might be interested in that. Let's see, Mike Collins, great information. Thanks, Mr. Bob Lusk. Hey, you're welcome, Mr. Mike Collins. Chuck Brinkman, is there a reference to the temperature that each type of common fish are most actively feeding? The reason I ask is I feed different feeds targeting the different fish in my pond. Yes, Chuck Brinkman, there are. Now, see, you made top fan status. That's pretty dadgum cool. We got several. I don't know how that works, but I'm glad we've got top fans. Bluegill, they're actively feeding, say, from the upper 50s until the upper 80s. But they will also feed in the mid-40s all the way to 90 degrees. Largemouth bass, if they're feed trained, they're going to feed actively from 55 to about 82 or 83. Channel catfish, 55, 56 degrees up until mid-80s. The other fish, most of those that aren't on fish food, their peak operating temperature is going to be low 60s to mid-70s. Which that's the peak operating temperature for all warm water fish that eat fish food. And that's the peak temperature for those that eat other fish as well. So there you go. Holy cow, we're at 7:27. So I'm going to kind of wrap it up. Remember, hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comments section. Click like, share this to your timeline. Makes you eligible for a Pond Boss hat, a Pond Boss mug that magically knows how to make hot things hot. Keep hot things hot, keep cool things cool. So, Pond Boss, $35 a year. By the way, the May-June issue of Pond Boss is finished at layout, getting ready to go to the printer, be mailed around the 1st of May. A lot of good meat in there, and I would encourage you to subscribe. It's well worth the $35 a year for it. I mean, you're going to go to dinner and spend $40 Friday night, and it's going to be gone the next day. This keeps on giving for a year. PondBoss.com, Ask the Boss, and this Facebook page. Also, I don't do this very well because I just don't think about it. My wife wants me to let everybody know that I am available for consulting. So if some of you guys out there want some help designing a lake, I'll help you do that. And I'm going to charge you for it because it's worth it. I promise you this, the money you pay me, I'll help you save by the mistakes you don't make. So take my 40 years worth of experience and put it to work for you. I'll be happy to do that. And that's how I'm making my living now. I recently sold the pond management side of Bob Lusk Outdoors to American Sportfish Company. And those guys are doing an outstanding job. That frees me up to go be good at what I'm good at, which is helping you create your fisheries program and to help you design the new fishing lakes. Otherwise, also with Pond Boss, we've got a resource guide, which this is it right here, which is loaded full of great vendors. So I don't want to be just self-promoting. I want you to know that depending on where you are, I will help you find a company to help you do what you want. It might be Solitude Lake Management. It might be John Wilson up in Ohio. It might be Matt Rail over in Indiana. So if you've got some pond needs, let me know. And the first thing I'll do is refer you to our resource guide and people that are in it to help them help you do what you need to do. And they're all good people because I know every one of them. So 7:29, I'm going to check out and go spend a little time at home sitting on the pond bank before it gets dark here in North Texas. I appreciate you joining me. I will see you next Wednesday. Hey, email me with some topics. What do you want to hear about? I didn't even think about this today until about 4 o'clock, and Leanne called me and says, what are you going to talk about? I said, I don't know. So we started brainstorming a little bit, and this is what we came up with, and she put it on there, promoted it. She's the one that's helping blow this thing up and turn it into something. So share this with other people if you don't mind. So until next Wednesday, I'm going to bid you farewell and say adios.